So it's possible to buy hibiscus cutters, but sometimes you don't want to buy cutters if you're not going to be using them very often. So I looked through my cutters and I found the longiflorum lily cutters, and I'm making my flower using the wider petal from those cutters. So I've got some 24 gauge wire and I'm going to cut that into quarters. And some flower paste that I've coloured to a pale pink colour using some paste food colouring. So I'm going to roll this into a sausage shape and press the wire into it. And if your hands are sticky, you can use a little extra cornflour, or you press it down until you can feel where the wire is. Sometimes it isn't always central. So I'm flattening it and making it thinner on either side. Then once you know where the wire is, you can use the handle of a paintbrush to roll it out. So you need to leave the centre so it's a little thicker, so it hides the wire. And then if you get the edges nice and thin, it gives the illusion of thinner petals. So I'm putting some cornflour under it to stop it from sticking, and some on the top as well. Then I'm going to take the cutter and rest it over the top so that the ridge goes up the middle of the cutter. Press it down firmly, and then I lift it up, and I'm just going around the edge, which helps to eliminate any of the furry edges. Then to soften the edges, I'm going to rest it onto the pressure pad and use a largish balling tool to go around the edge. And on the top edge, I'm going to use the smaller end of the dog bone tool just to pull it out to make it slightly irregular. So it's possible to buy silicone veiners for hibiscus, but as with the cutter, it's not a flower that I do very often. So when it's a flower that I don't want to have to spend a lot of money buying specialist veiners, I just use a veining tool, like this gem veining tool, which has got ridges on it, and you can roll them over the petal to add some texture. And I'm going to add some over the ridge as well. So because it has the wire going almost all the way up to the top, hold the end of the wire and then you can bend the petal over to give it a natural curve. And I'm going to pinch it at the base and then pinch those edges so they curl under. So I'm going to leave that in a flower stand to dry. You can just stick it into polystyrene or into a block of the dry oasis. If it's curling over too much, you can just rest it against another petal to help support it just while it dries. So those then need to be left to dry, preferably overnight. For each hibiscus, you need to make 5 petals. So for the centre of it, I've got another 24 gauge wire that I'm going to cut in half, and I'm going to leave one end sticking up slightly, and then I'm going to use some floral tape to tape the 2 wires together. And that end that was sticking up, I'm going to bend it over into a closed hook. I'm going to roll this into a long sausage shape and then press that all the way up the sausage. And now I can roll that to make it a bit longer and thinner. It's quite thick there, so what I'm going to do is break off some of the paste and actually take it away and then re-roll it. So I've left the cutter there because I'm going to rest it against the cutter and it should be almost the length of the cutter. And then I'm going to get hold of the tip of it where the wire should be up to the tip and then curve it slightly. And for the stamens for this, I've got some little pearl yellow stamens. They're matte pearl type because I'm going to be painting them. And I'm going to take 5 of them and cut them fairly short. And these get stuck right into the end. So I've put 2 in there at the same time and I've opened them up slightly. So when the petals are nice and dry, you can colour them with powder colour. So I've got a pink colour here that I'm dusting the edge with. So I'm dusting from the edge in towards the centre. This particular colour is called Raspberry Delight. But any pink shade that you like would work. These hibiscus tend to be bright colours and they come in pinks and oranges and reds. Then once I've done the edge, I'm going to brush some from the centre bottom up towards the top of the petal. And I'm just brushing off any excess because I don't want it to dry sort of as blotches on it. Then once I've done that pink, I'm going to do a darker colour. This is actually ruby. I'm going to do 2 or 3 mainly lines going up from the base. Just shake it to get rid of any excess. So that's the last of the petals done now. So I also need to dust the centres. So I'm going to dust some pink all over that column piece. And brush it a little in between the stamens as well. And I'm going to add some ruby to the base of it. Then for the actual stamens, I've got some paste colour which I've diluted with a little water. And the ones that are sticking out at the end, I'm painting in a dark pink. going to clean the brush off with some water, and then I'm going to use some yellow to make those yellow stamens a brighter yellow on the side. Now the next stage is to steam these. So I'm going to use a steamer. If you don't have a steamer, you can just hold them over the steam of an electric kettle. And what the steaming does is it sets the colour and brings out the colour a little bit as well. So this shouldn't take too long to heat up because I did heat it up just now. So I'm going to hold the petal into this jet of steam. And if you look at the two petals side by side, you can see the difference that the steaming makes. So I need to steam all of them, and also the centre as well, to set the colour on that. They look shiny at this stage, but they will dry to a matte finish. So all the petals need steaming and they need to be left to dry. So the final thing to do when all the petals are dry is to tape them all together. So you take the centre, take each petal and you can bend it at the base. I normally put my nail right at the base, hold where the flower paste is and then bend it. If you just get it and pull the wire, you'll pull it out of the petal. So then I'm going to start positioning these around. I find it's easier to tape one at a time. And once you've done one, you can break off the tape and add the next one. This one I've actually put slightly higher up, so I can then pull it down so that the base of the petal is sitting on the top of the tape. The beauty of having each petal wired individually is it gives you quite a bit of flexibility with the finished flower. You can move the petals around in an arrangement to get just the position that you want. So each one I've taped individually. When you're using the tape, make sure you do pull it tight. That way you don't get wrinkles in the tape and it holds the petals firmly. So when you've added all the petals, you can see that that is beginning to droop on the wire. So you can add some extra wire. I'm actually going to add now a 22 gauge wire, so it's a slightly thicker one. You'll find that it is easier to bend the wires in an arrangement if you've got several thinner wires taped together. If you just put it on one really thick wire, it's difficult to bend. But building up strength with thinner wires means that it's still easy to arrange them. Now that is still feeling a little bit as if it's bending too much on its own. So I'm going to use the other half of the 22 gauge wire as well. And then you can pull the petals and make sure they're nice and even and get the flower as open or as closed as you want it to be. Just twisting them slightly just so that they will interlink. So that's my finished hibiscus flower.